Hello and welcome to the CivilNet studio. To many they are heroes who carried out necessary justice. To some they are criminals, or worse. I'm speaking about the members of Operation Nemesis, the band of avengers who murdered the masterminds of the Armenian Genocide. It's a moment of history that has captured imaginations for a century and is still part of our national discourse today. Here with us is Birgit Kofler, author of the book I Have Killed, But I Am Not a Murderer, taking a line from Solomon Tehlirian's defense from his trial for killing Talat Pasha. Birgit is here to discuss not just the history of Operation Nemesis, but the legal and moral questions it raises. Thanks for being here, Birgit.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Now, first off, you are from Austria and have no Armenian background. How did you discover this piece of history, and what really inspired you about it to research it?
Well, I guess there's more than one answer to it. That came from different angles. Maybe I should stress in the beginning that this book, of course, originally, before it was translated now to Armenian, was meant for a German-speaking publish. This is important as a background because that was one of the motives why I wanted to do it. That I think there's very few awareness in the German-speaking world about the genocide against the Armenian people. Few awareness and a lot of disinformation. So this is one of the sources why I wanted to write about the topic. The other thing is that early in my career, I worked for the Austrian Foreign Service in the field of human rights. And that was back in the 1990s. So there again, I had a lot to do with the genocide question. We had the former Yugoslavian war at that time. There was Rwanda at that time. And something that always concerned me so much about this type of crimes against humanity was impunity. And what happens if perpetrators get away with their deeds? So this were the angles kind of I was taking that, and I always wanted to write about the genocide against the Armenian people. And then I happened to read about the Operation Nemesis, and I thought that was a very good angle to tell about the genocide to also a public who is not necessarily very much into this topic, but who might become interested through this specific story. And when then I dedicated full time to writing, I finally found the time to do it.
And what was your approach to telling this story?
Well, I think one important approach is, as you said, I have no Armenian background, so maybe being a kind of third party, it was maybe easier for me to have a look at the full picture, to try to put all the details together, because Operation Nemesis has been told from different angles, from different perspectives. I was trying to put all those pieces of information together to give to have a look of a third party to the story, and to tell the full story, to try to give all details that I could gather, that I was able to put together. Also, I found it very important to tell also the story of those that are not so much known, those members of the Nemesis team, if you like. We know a lot about those who then went to the US, who probably did their own autobiographies, who were known heroes at some point at least. But I think we all know very little about those who, for example, stayed in then Soviet Armenia.
One of the questions that you raise in your book and that you just mentioned now is what happens when mass murder goes unpunished? And what about the morality, so to speak, of vigilante justice? At the time of Operation Nemesis, they had no genocide convention or criminal courts. So while we have those today, we actually still do see impunity happening. So what do we make of all of this?
Yeah, this is really, you are here at the very important point of this, and it's a big ethical, moral, of course, legal question around it. Let me maybe put it in the words of Raphael Lemkin, the father of the Genocide Convention, as we call him. When he knew and learned about the Tellerian trial in Berlin, he said, I mean, how can it be that it's illegal? Obviously, it is illegal to kill one person, and you go to trial for that. But that obviously you don't go to trial if you kill 1 million people. And I think he put it the right way. And what was his answer? His answer was to say, we just can't let perpetrators of crimes against humanity get away with it. The answer is not that everybody takes justice in their own hands. The answer is that we can't let them get away with it. So this is one perspective. The other thing is, which is quite interesting and is also not so known, at least in Europe, that the main perpetrators of the genocide against the Armenian people, they were on trial. There was actually a short period at the end of the Ottoman Empire where they were taken to trial in absentia. So they had already fled the country. They had gone to Germany, to Rome, to whatever places. But there were trials with them being absent, and they were convicted. But of course, it was never that was never executed because they were not in the country anymore. Later on, all of this was when Kemal, so-called Atatürk, then took over power, and there was immunity for all of them. The convictions were null, and on the contrary, the perpetrators then became heroes even.
And that's something that we still see today. This is a very politically loaded issue because for Armenians, it is justice being fulfilled to some degree in a world of denial. And that denial is such a component of things. And so those who seek to deny, for example, it is state policy in Turkey and Azerbaijan to deny the genocide. And we've seen in Turkey kind of a reawakening of this love for Talat Pasha, which I still don't understand, and many people don't, but it's kind of this neo-Ottomanism. And then in Azerbaijan, Enver Pasha has become someone who now that they reference, including with the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict going on.
Denial, I think for very good reasons in genocide research. Scientists put denial as one specific phase of genocide. So it's part of genocide. And why is it so? It's because, I mean, you having seen all phases of a genocide, and then in the end, the perpetrators would tell the victims, oh no, it never happened. And if it happened anyway, it was your own fault. Mm-hmm. Which means there is no way you would see justice, because if you deny something, there's no justice. You tell the victims, they're just not victims, they lie. So you victimize them again. So I think it's a very ugly, but also a very dangerous part of a genocide, the denial part. Dangerous, why? Because denial always means it's the basis for new conflict, for new violence, and this is what you see all over the place. This is, of course, also what you see in this part of the world. So I think denial is a very dangerous thing. Not only it's just so awful to do it to the victims and to take the possibility of having justice, but also because it's so dangerous to have denial because it is the basis for new conflict and for new violence. Also, if you look at language, I mean, I found publications, newspaper publications and others from the end of World War I and just the last days, and the kind of wording that was used also in the then new Azerbaijan to talk about Armenians, and the wording that was used in the last couple of years, it's just very similar. And it's worrying if history is repeated so much. And I think coming from a country where we are a nation of perpetrators, Austria and Germany, and I think the way, I mean, it's not always that they did it by themselves. They were also forced from outside. There was the Nuremberg trial, which was not done by the Germans themselves, which was done by the international community. But Austria and Germany had to confront their past and had to confront what they had done and had to confront the crimes they had committed when it comes to Shoah. So it's maybe even more difficult to understand how a nation just can't touch at all its own past and the crimes it had perpetrated.
And finally, so as we've kind of already alluded to, you trace how the great powers and their calculations after World War I really sidelined Armenians' claims. And this is, again, something that we see happening again today, especially about Armenia. Armenia has still not put its case at the International Criminal Court against Ilham Aliyev, whom many see today as a new Talat Pasha. Whether that's accurate or not is up to people's debate, but he certainly, if he went to the ICC, would most likely be found accountable for war crimes. And yet, he's also being held up and by a lot of the EU diplomats have just been visiting with him, and it's all about energy considerations and going against Russia at the expense of Armenians. And so what does this tell us about the fragility of never again and then the role of legal principles for international crimes?
Well, I think we have to see that enormous progress was made on the level of international law and international criminal law. I mean, compared to the 1920s. We do have the Genocide Convention. We do have the International Court. We did have ad hoc tribunals for certain situations like Yugoslavia. So, of course, enormous progress was made, and we have to see it. But at the same time, as you mentioned, what's kind of parallel? So, of course, you see every day how fragile the legal constructions are, and also how fragile the never again postulation is. When it came to the Lausanne Treaty after World War I, in the end, all the promises that had been made to the Armenian people weren't just fulfilled. It was just like they weren't there. And it's hard not to see certain parallels to today. And this is why I stressed so much, it is so dangerous to forget and to deny, because this is always the basis for repeating crimes.
Well, thank you for helping us to remember. You'll be having your book talk at the Genocide Museum Institute this Thursday, so I wish you good luck with that and continuing to spread the word about the Armenian Genocide and its history. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining CivilNet.